favorite classics retold by David Henry Wilson.
James M. Barrie, Peter Pan. Have you ever heard of Peter Pan, the little boy who never grew up? Of course you have. He is very beautiful, sometimes a bit selfish, and sometimes a bit too pleased with himself, but you can't help loving him. Lots of children have dreamt of him, but not many have actually seen him. And even fewer have flown away and lived with him in Neverland. This is the story of 3 children who did. Their names were Wendy, John, and Michael Darling, and they lived with their parents, Mr. and Mrs. Darling, and their dog Nana, in a nice house in London. It all began one evening when the children were in bed, and Mrs. Darling and Nana were sitting by the fire in the living room. Mrs. Darling fell asleep and was dreaming of Neverland when suddenly the window blew open, and through it blew Peter Pan himself. He was accompanied by a strange light which dashed round the room so fast that you couldn't see what it was. Nana started barking, and Mrs. Darling woke up just in time to see the little boy and the bright light flying out of the window, with Nana chasing them. Although they escaped, the dog closed the window, and Peter Pan's shadow was caught in it. Mrs. Darling didn't know what to do with the shadow, and so she rolled it up and put it in a drawer. What would you do if you lost your shadow? You'd go and look for it, wouldn't you? And that's just what Peter did. A few nights later, he flew in with the bright light, and it was she who found the shadow. Who was the bright light? She. A tiny girl fairy called Tinkerbell, who loved Peter almost as much as he loved himself.
Here it is, Peter.
She tinkled as she opened the drawer. Her voice was like tiny bells, and only Peter could understand what she said.
Good. Now I can stick it back on,
said Peter, and fetched some soap from the bathroom. Have you ever tried sticking things with soap? If you have, you'll know that soap doesn't stick. And that is why Peter sat on the nursery floor and began to cry. And his crying woke Wendy. She knew who he was, but all the same, she was surprised to see him.
What are you crying for?
She asked.
Because the soap won't stick my shadow on,
Sobbed